Mermaid bears are a concept I keep forgetting are a real thing. And that's not a joke. If grizzly bears had ocean sirens, they'd be this right here. Now there's a lot of ways that can make you afraid of this thing, like the fact that they're way bigger than you think, like 12 feet, 1,200 pounds. I could mention what they do to penguins, sharks, other seals, one time a whale, or I could tell you about the one time a person got murked by one. RIP Kirsty, you did not deserve any of that. But instead, I'm gonna tell you a different story, because even after all these years, I still don't have answers. In 2006, photographer Paul Nicklin took a trip to Antarctica to find one of the most intimidating predators in the water. Which wasn't hard, because leopard seals are not like other predators. They're weird. Most predators are afraid of people. Bears avoid our voices, and a study showed that even the top predators in Africa hightail it whenever they hear human. And sharks barely acknowledge you, but a leopard seal will swim directly in your face and stare into your soul, and probably follow you around after. So when Paul found a seal, or I guess the seal found him, he ignored the pleas of his ancestors and got into the water with mammal mosasaur. Bless your heart, Paul, because a massive female sea leopard swam directly at him, and right when he was sure he was getting mauled, she just stopped and studied him. It's almost like Paul's lack of fear confused her, and the seal looked him over out of curiosity. She even studied her reflection in his camera. Then she swam away and Paul thought it was over. Until she came back with a live penguin, which she let go in front of Paul. And when Paul obviously didn't accept, she got another penguin. Then another. For the next 4 days, every time Paul entered the water, the leopard seal would be right there to greet him and attempt to feed him. I think she low-key got frustrated because she started bringing increasingly lower HP penguins. At one point, he had 5 past tense penguins floating around his head. Actually high-key, because leopard seals often blow bubbles when they're mad, and when he didn't eat the penguin, she basically water-sighed at him. Can we appreciate just how weird that is? Like, the only other time I've heard of a wild, not a pet, I'm not talking about your cat, but a wild animal straight up trying to feed a person, it was orcas. Best guess is she thought he was a seal with a severe skill issue, but that's still wild. Imagine a polar bear pulling up with DoorDash. You love to see it, unless you're a penguin. The more you know. There's a shark that knows camels exist and none of his shark friends believe him. These are animals that don't make sense in the same place, except your perception of the world only gets more distorted. The chances you run into a camel in the ocean are very, very low, but never zero. The Karai camels of India don't just swim, they can travel for hours across rivers and even shallow stretches of sea, all to reach salty mangroves on the other side. Which means there's at least one shark in the history of history that knows about camels. Lions on a beach is like snow in Africa. You know it happens, but it's always weird to see. You even have some lions that specialize in hunting along the beach, which means the number of lions aware of the concept of stingrays is more than one. I love how utterly baffled he is. Like, you know, he looks at the water and goes, I know you lion. Brown bears and polar bears don't just know each other exist. We even have growler bears to show for it. The funny thing is, they did a study, and 95% of the times when these two predators pull up, it was the polar bear that was more submissive. Also, grizzly bears are more likely to poke a polar than a male polar bear boning a brown bear. Fun fact, the same moose that mogs cars can also dive up to 20 feet. And there's at least one documented case in 1992 where 4 transient killer whales murked 2 moose swimming off Pleasant Island. But because sea wolves, you heard me, can swim up to 7 miles and they'll swim around the same area, there's a good chance there's at least one orca that's experienced a moose and a wolf.
Spiders have 3 life cycles.
If Spider-Man was less man and more spider, we'd have a problem. First, he'd start off as an egg. Nothing special there, but then the next phase would start with him surfing the World Wide Web. By that I mean spiderlings use their web to fly, using silk threads that interact with Earth's electric field.
Be enormously dangerous.
Yes, spiders fly. You're asking why? Well, the main reason is so they don't get eaten by their own siblings. Peter's an only child. Now let's talk about that web. Spider silk's 5 times stronger than steel, 10 times thinner than hair. If a strand was pencil thick, it could stop a Boeing in midair. If you made a strand long enough to wrap around the Earth, it'd still weigh less than 5 pounds. If this much silk was possible, it'd be illegal. Scientists even tried genetically engineering spider goats because of how overpowered it was. Why goats? Well, they tried spider farms, but the spiders kept eating each other. Peter lives alone. The last stage of his life cycle would be an adult spider. We know what that means.
I can't believe our first hit MIT!
As a spider, his dating options would be strumming a love song on his spider web to attract a mate, giving his mate a back rub, tying her up in a web so she can't eat him, or actually just letting himself get eaten. Yeah, Peter's single.
Even if it breaks Peter Parker's heart.
The biggest mistake people make about evolution is thinking it's survival of the fittest. Really, it's survival of just being good enough to keep the ball rolling. This is the babirusa. You can find it on islands like Sulawesi. Their defining trait is the teeth growing out of their heads. but if males don't manage to wear them down, they can end up getting return spiked in the skull. But as long as it happens after they're done making bacon, evolution will remain Ray Charles to it. Female hyenas have to give birth to what looks like a male member, and it is as painful as you think it is. 20% of first-time mothers die in the process, and 60% of firstborns suffocate as well. Hyenas don't have a pseudo situation because it's an advantage, but because it wasn't enough of a disadvantage to make hyenas history. And what doesn't kill you, evolution will just remain Helen Keller to. In fact, sometimes nature reinforces the handicap. Like the peacocks with the biggest, flashiest feathers get the most attention from females. They're also the most likely to get flatlined by a tiger before they even have the chance to take off. Male fiddler crabs with the biggest claws are considered the high-value men. But the claw's so big, they genuinely can't feed themselves with it. And because crabs only have as long as the low tide to eat, it is a literal handicap. Claw-eat crab? Nope, that was sloppy. The best example is literally lions. Lions with the biggest manes move like main characters, and the darker manes are more attractive. But bigger, darker manes can also overheat an animal that's already wearing an afro, to the point where in the summer, some males will actually stop eating just so the metabolism doesn't heat them up even further. The real middle finger is they can get so hot that the very thing that makes them attractive to females can also nerf their ability to make babies, since heat stress can damage baby batter and cause defective swimmers. But again, if it's not enough to murk them all, then evolution says play ball. Even if it leads to a lobotomy, the more you know. Nature is remarkably unserious. I mean remarkably, intentionally, flagrantly unserious, because if I told you there's a bird that decapitates baby crocodiles, has allegedly eaten baby lechways, that's a lechway, can stand at 5 feet tall with an 8-foot wingspan in a world where I'm a me 5'11", often subtracts its own sibling from the census by bludgeoning them into oblivion, often while the mother watches, is scientifically named B. rex, sounds like this, and does all that while looking like a disgruntled Muppet with malicious intent, you'd probably call them an evil-eyed avian antichrist and the spawn of bird Satan. Now what if I told you all that's true and they still have the personality of a cinnamon roll? This is a shoebill stork, and that is the first lie. They're actually in the pelican family, which honestly does not help their case. But shoebill storks are also strangely accepting of people, and a favorite for bird watchers in Africa for the fact that you can stand only a couple of feet from their nest and they won't even act aggressively. The worst they'll do is give a war veteran PTSD, because that beak clapping is how they communicate and greet each other. Machine gun hippogriff will also bow, and it's how couples greet each other after coming back home to the nest. But it doesn't just apply to birds. Some, like Sushi the shoebill, see it as a gesture of respect, and she'll only tolerate your presence if and only if you bow back. And as someone who is a career ornithophobic, I would genuinely disregard all of that just to bow to a B. rex once. I'm not kidding. If there's someone that can get me in the room with a B. rex, ethically, I'll do it. I was actually supposed to meet Sushi in Uganda, but then a bunch of stuff went down, so yeah, let me know, and the more you know. Sloths might just be a morality test from God, or nature, whatever you believe in. On paper, it would be so easy to roast a low-achieving, crap-eating, barely functioning moss blanket. They have probably the worst diet on the planet, and for their lack of effort, it takes them a month to digest a leaf. They poop once a week, and for some reason, they climb down the tree to do it, and the process is so dangerous that half of all sloths go out like Elvis, on the toilet. They're such predatory light work, harpy eagle, they'll sometimes go out of their way to leave sloths alive, not out of pity, but so their chicks have an easy, low-risk dummy to practice on. Sloths get treated like a tutorial. They get crap, they take craps, and believe it or not, they eat it too. There are places in the world where toilet sloths are a thing, where they break into outhouses and scoop out and eat possible. These strains can be used to treat malaria, Chagas disease, and maybe even breast cancer. It might also be why sloths almost never seem to get infections. They can get deep fried on power lines, hanging on to life by a thread, but no infection. That's a big deal, because scientists are scared that by 2050, people becoming resistant to antibiotics could lead to 10 million deaths a year. So imagine if the same sloth you treated as a filler character ends up being the answer. Mind you, it'd have to be wild sloths too, not the ones in zoos. But yeah, shout out to Costa Rica, the people, and of course the animals. The government is low-key, high-key trying to destroy it all, so yeah. The more you know. Also, if you do go, please, ecotourism. Support the locals, don't give the government more excuses to, yeah, the more you know. I just want to know who told the chimps we're in a recession, because why are the chimps fighting again? The biggest chimp civil war in recorded history is happening right now in Uganda, and they are legitimately demolishing each other. In the 70s, Jane Goodall had a front row seat to the 4-year Gombe chimp war, and by the way, when I say war, I'm not being cute, they went to effing war. Like, you had chimps carrying out silent border patrols, and even coordinating hits on rival neighboring groups, where they would attack any females, beat on any cornered males, and sometimes even snatch babies off the census and turn them into a post-game meal. The war only ended when one group got completely wiped out. And now it looks like it's happening again. Going back to the 90s, there's always been this massive conglomerate of Ngogo chimps in Kabale Park in Uganda, right? We're talking about like 200 something chimps. Those 200 were split into these little clusters, and they were like chill with each other. The chimps would constantly move around from group to group. Chimps in one group would hook up with those in another, and whenever two clusters would run into each other, it'd be a peaceful reunion, you know? Lots of socializing, lots of grooming. Boy, let me tell you, June 25th, 2015, the vibe changed. There were 3 main clusters, the Eastern, Western, and the Central cluster. That day in June, the Centrals woke up feeling the Mayweather because they ran up on the Westerners and it was fades on sight, with the Westerns eventually getting chased out. Since then, both sides have had nothing but smoke for each other. At first, the Central group was bigger than the Westerners, but the Westwards were on a King Von type of timing because they were much more aggressive. And if there was a body being dropped, it usually meant one less Centraler. Since then, the Westerners have murked at least 7 Central males and 17 babies. And on top of that, 14 others straight up disappeared. Either they went AWOL or they got put in past tense too. Oh, and apparently the Easterners are more on the Central side, but for the most part they're staying out of it. That's strictly a business decision, since scientists watching say it's looking like the West might actually erase the Central. This is gonna sound like a straight up lie, and honestly, I do not care, but I swear I was literally planning a trip to the same Kabale National Park before this all went down. Honestly, I still might do it. A certain person, no names, is threatening to cut a certain budget that would basically end the decades of research projects that have been happening here, which means we might not get to see this war through. You know what? I might actually do it. Say I won't. Say I won't. I want you to. The more you know. Some animals have no business being normalized. Like, how do we end up taking giraffes for granted? Like, did you know some giraffes are low-key going extinct? No, you didn't. So you thought because they move in silence and you learned about them when you were 5, you thought this stretch-necked unicorn camel leopard would be around forever, but joke's on you, they're not even silent. Yeah, this walking penthouse is weirder than you think. You want to know how weird? For the longest, we thought there was only one giraffe species, only because no one ever bothered to DNA test them, because once they finally did, we found out there's actually 4. There's 4 flavors of giraffe in the Giraffidae family. Hey, oh, you about to scroll? Go ahead, bro. You rude as hell. For the rest of y'all that have decorum, there's 4 species, the northern, southern reticulated, and the Maasai giraffe. And between those 4 species, there's 7 subspecies. You got one more time to pump fake me with your finger. How dare you? This is important. That's why y'all can't read. No attention span. But out of those 4 species are 7 subspecies. Out of those 7, the Kordofan giraffe, which is like a spin-off of the northern, is also critically endangered. Science says there's only 2,000 left. And the giraffe named Nubian by the be in past tense, since their numbers got nerfed by 95% since the 80s. Did you know there's more elephants in Africa than giraffes? And by a lot too. And no shade, but bamboo bears been off the endangered list for like 10 years. Giraffes were added in 2024, and low-key, folks been trying to put them in since 2017. It's really true. People don't appreciate you till you're gone. Imagine explaining to children that we used to have a 2-story high-strolling didgeridoo with a neck longer than a prohibition, and people just acted like that was normal. Well, now we're in a giraffe recession, and they've already been discontinued in 7 countries, so Jurassic Park might be closer than you think. The more you know. Did you hear about the rhino that refused to go back to the wild because he just liked being around humans so much? Oh, you haven't? Well, let me learn you something. This isn't AI or CGI, it's just Nepal. Nepal has 20% of all the one-horned rhinos in the world, and 90% of those are in Chitwan National Park. But Chitwan also has rhinos commuting through towns, pachyderm pedestrians, on their way to feeding fields. And everyone seems remarkably unbothered by it. The rhino goes about its business, and most people respect them enough to leave the rhinos be. Why must touch? But for the most part, they coexist, even if it means the only deposit you make at the ATM is in your pants. And even if it means you go out for a jog and get joined by a mobile boulder. But what if I told you they're exactly where they want to be? A couple years ago, folks found a baby rhino that had lost his mom in a flood and was believed to have been attacked by a tiger. And since every rhino counts, park staff nursed him back to health and rehabbed him so he could hopefully return back to the wild. I think they did too good a job, because when the time came years later for the rhino named Mikoli to return, Macaulay said nah. Bro took one look at the forest and knew he wasn't built for it. Park staff tried releasing Macaulay, but like a plus-size homing pigeon, he just kept coming back. They tried airdropping him to Koshi Tapu Wildlife Reserve, but he lasted 4 days because he got sick and had to be brought back. I'm not saying he faked it, but I am saying that children make it less obvious when they don't want to go to school. So now Macaulay and others like him are a persistent presence in Chitwan because they'd rather walk through markets than marshes. And look, you don't gotta tell me this ain't the best thing for rhinos, but something about rhinos managing to find a way is healing to me, and so is the fact that I could walk here. I could walk here. The only thing weirder than polar bears is finding out why they're more common than pizzlies. Polar bears and grizzly bears can have cubs together. It's not common, it's super rare, but it does happen. And the name depends on who the daddy is. Grizzly growler, polar pizzly, and there's a lot more growlers than pizzlies. A study found that when the two predators pulled up, I don't remember what the exact number was, but over 90% of the time, the polar bear was the submissive one. Which actually makes sense, because how often does a polar bear come into contact with something anywhere near its weight class? Like, unless a whale dies, the only time a polar bear perceives another polar bear is when they're making or raising another polar bear. Meanwhile, grizzly bears have at least one fate scheduled per year involving salmon. Okay, maybe not like literally, but when it comes to dealing with other bears, grizzlies seem to win off experience. But also bears, like other predators like lions and tigers, when the males mature, they move out far and wide away from their literal motherlands. Why? Well, it's a really good way to avoid inbreeding. But it also means male grizzlies are more likely to end up further on the sea ice as they spread out. So yeah, grizzly bears are more likely to poke a polar than a polar bear is to get with a grizzly. And even though it's rare, it's slowly become more common. In 2017, researchers identified 8 hybrids and traced them back to one female polar bear after she got with 2 male grizzlies. And I purposely saved that fact for the end, the more you know. The only thing weirder than polar bears is finding out, okay, the algorithm's not